call. First and foremost, my name is Alexa, Operations Manager at the BPM RIA office, which stands for Broward Palm Beach Miami Real Estate Investors Association, your only local chapter here in South Florida that is partnered with the National Real Estate Investors Association. We have an awesome webinar today. We're going to get all into the inside of our local market, the real deal in our market. So we have some incredible gentlemen here today. They will introduce themselves in just a moment, but I have some great announcements for you guys, some upcoming events, so many upcoming events. I invite you to go check out our website. Right now, I'm going to throw the link in the chat. As you all know, we keep all of our events posted on our website in the upcoming events tab. We have another webinar this week with smart home loans. We're going to get into Airbnb financing. We have Pelago coming next week. We are going to get all into short sales as well next week. And we have 2 in-person events coming up. You are not reading this wrong. We are going to West Palm Beach, guys. So I know a lot of you are over there. So everyone in the West Palm Beach County area, I very much so recommend you go RSVP for Thursday, October 27th, as soon as possible, because we have free admission for this event. So if you could just RSVP for us, that would be absolutely incredible. So bring your friends, bring anyone. There's going to be a little bit of networking going on here, and we're going to get into short-term rentals. So highly recommend you attend, as well as our in-person quarterly meeting. As you all know, we meet quarterly in person at the Signature Grand in Davie, member and non-member pricing. Our members get in free for this event. We're going to have a ton of networking here, and we're going to get into our presentation with Andy Heller, which a lot of you guys know Andy. We just had a webinar with him not too long ago, and I'll be introducing you guys to him very, very soon if you have not met him. So look out for these.
Yep, and we just want to make sure the West Palm Beach event, it is a limited space. So you have to RSVP. If we hit the maximum, we may turn you away. So just make sure you RSVP and do the right thing. If you RSVP, show up, please. Right. You're taking the space from somebody else. So
yes, totally go ahead, go straight to our website, RSVP. It is free. So if you're planning on going, please do that. All righty. Best way to keep up with events, if you ask me, is via text message. Whoever's opted into our text message got a text this morning to remind you of the webinar today. If you would like text reminders, text BPM REIA, one word, to our event line, 954-800-6961. One word, BPM RIA, to our event line. Don't call this number. This is just for events, updates, as well as our raffles and things like that. So don't call me here. You guys should know my contact information. If not, I will send it to you today. Our upcoming boot camp training. So many people are already asking about this training. So we're just going to tell you guys, here are the upcoming dates. You can go ahead and register for this training right now. It is a 2 full-day live Zoom training. The entire training is led by Anish. As you see on your screen here, we get into many topics. We go into wholesaling, flipping, rehabbing, so many great topics that we get into. We have 4 incredible guest speakers that speak during this training, and you can see who they are, what companies they own, what they do, all on our website, bpmquickstart.com, which I will throw in the chat for you guys as well. So you can go ahead and look at more details about our quick start training. Thank you guys so much for responding to this poll. I will send you an email with more information after this webinar, and I'll always be giving you guys my contact information. If you have any questions about our trainings, workshops, events, I'm here to answer them. So thank you guys.
And most importantly, I give you a money back guarantee. So
yeah,
you say, hey, Nish, this thing sucks, right? You wasted my time. I kind of joke about it. I'm not God. I can't give you your time back, but I'll gladly give you your money back, guys. So, and it's via Zoom. So you could be anywhere doing this training, guys.
For sure. I know I have everybody asking me When's the next training? As soon as we've had one. So here's the next one, member and non-member pricing, and link is in the chat for you guys. So there you are. Memberships, as you know, our members get the most discounts to our seminars, workshops, trainings. Their guests get in for half off at the networking events. They get the entire National RIA benefit package, which includes discounts at Home Depot, Office Depot, so many incredible vendors. So if you don't have a membership already and you want to save on those events and your benefits, that go ahead and buy your membership right now. That will solve your problems when it comes to getting in all of our events at a discount or free. I put the link in the chat for you guys, so you can go ahead and get your membership. You will be able to log into our member portal called Member Flow and get all your benefits and everything inside our member portal, register for events and all that good stuff. So I threw that in the chat for you guys, and thank you guys for responding to the poll. You will have more information very shortly after this webinar. And one-on-one coaching and mentoring. So many of you know that we do offer one-on-one coaching and mentoring. Some of you may not. So I invite you to go ahead and go to the website, schedule a discovery call if you're interested in one-on-one coaching and mentoring. We put up 100% of the money for our students' deals and split the profit 50-50. You are working truly one-on-one with a mentor. You have a mentor matched to you. I put the website right here, and I'll also put it in the chat for you guys, as well as my email. So you can go ahead, book a discovery call. I can get you more detailed information on what's included in the programs, pricing, whatever questions you have, I'll be happy to help. And then we can also book your 1-hour consultation with a mentor. So you get all your questions answered and see if this program is a good fit for you. And thank you guys so much for responding to the poll. You guys are awake today. Thank goodness. Oh, we need you awake. And this is also my direct line. And I went ahead and threw my email in the chat for you guys. So go ahead and do that. Always want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, thank our vendor partners, thank the National RIA, thank everyone who always participates in our webinars. Thank you guys all for being here today, being on time, being in action by educating yourself. And we hope we have a ton of questions for our awesome speakers today. So I will go ahead and stop sharing and let everybody enjoy this incredible. I'm excited. So
awesome. So thank you, Alexa. So I do see a lot of new names on here. I see some familiar faces also, virtually, that is, unless someone else signed in for you and you're just faking it. But so my name's Anish. I am president of BPM RIA. My background, I'm a licensed real estate agent since 2002. I'm still a licensed mortgage guy. I grew up in Jersey, and I'm Indian, so that's where my sarcasm comes from. I'm married to a Latin wife, so if I do give you some wife jokes, my wife's not here right next to me, so I could be a man and make fun of her until later. Otherwise, unless she watches the replay on the webinar, then I'm totally screwed. I've been in real estate for 20 plus years. I read the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books. I was on the path of Poor Dad. And I said, I got to make a change. And I was up to 28 properties back in the boom. I know some of you guys are old timers. And I thought I'd be done at 38 years old saying, hey, I'm going to be done with real estate. I'm going to be retired. Yeah, I was done, meaning I lost all my properties and I got wiped out. So I did spend over $50,000 on a national real estate coaching program. Good information. The problem was my coach was out in Utah. He didn't know the South Florida market. So that was a bit of a challenge. The good thing was they actually said, go to your local RIA. So if you can remember in 2008 or 7 or 8, I should say, I think there was only like 1 or 2 shows on flipping houses. I never heard of a RIA. And fast track, I actually did the old coaching program. I was one of the top students. And I bought the club with a partner, which we used to be BRIA, from my own mentors. Some of you guys know we just rebranded this year because I was getting tired of everyone thinking we only buy in Broward County. So that's why it's BPM. So it's Broward, Palm Beach, Miami-Dade real estate. We buy in all 3 counties. The irony is now we're buying throughout Florida. So who knows, with my luck, in a year or two, we'll change the name again. So to keep you on your toes on that portion too. So what I'm really excited about is that, I'm going to introduce you these to my friends. I'm going to start with first, but two guys I respect a ton. And and I'll let these guys talk about it. So if you've been kind of following us, we were part of PAC, which is the professional athletic community. If you guys are football fans, I know if you're especially Dolphin fans and you're watching what's happening. I know Ben's been working out. I don't know if he can play quarterback yet, but maybe Chris can. So it's been a little bit chaotic on the football end of it. And if you guys aren't football fans, you're saying, what the heck is he talking about? But what we were really privileged was this past month, we got to work with 20 ex-NFL players. And the cool thing is, guess what they're really excited about is real estate. And that was the number one thing that they wanted to really learn. And, Caleb and Chip, what these guys are doing is pretty amazing. These young men, right? They're younger than me, so I'll call them young. Probably, I don't know, guys, how much money do you guys think they made in that room? Those football players, what do you think they've probably done that? I mean,
a couple of those guys had, $50 million plus contracts.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking a room of the 0.001% in the NFL. And they're out there wanting to learn real estate and they're asking all these questions. And so when they came up with this program, and it's the first kind in any of the four major sports, Caleb, who actually started this program, he asked the three of us, because we're different, we have different expertise in what we do locally in real estate. And, Ben, which I've known for a long time, I guess we're on, I don't know, maybe 12 years, 13 years, somewhere around there.
Lots of gray hairs there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That relationship.
Yeah, exactly. So, he saw me when I had hope before I was married. So, now that, no, I'm kidding. So, it's been our friendship has been a long time and I really look up to him. And again, I'll let these guys introduce themselves. And Chris is a newer friend, I would say first, but his story is pretty awesome too. So I'm going to let you guys take over. Chris, you want to start about, who you are and your background a little bit?
Sure.
What you do?
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on the webinar, Anish and Alexa, thank you. So yeah, I got started in real estate back in 2009. Actually, my wife and I bought our very first foreclosed condo with money that we had saved, and we picked up a little studio condo for $18,000. That's how I started into real estate. But before that, the way I grew up, I actually was born in Ireland. So there's no way I was going to be the quarterback. And I grew up playing rugby. So I grew up over in Ireland and a little bit in Scotland, came to the United States when I was 15, but I grew up in a medical family. My dad was a doctor, my mom was a nurse, and really was on the track to go to med school, wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps because I thought, he loves that and I will too. And went through the whole thing, got my degree in microbiology at University of Florida, and actually got into medical school back over in the UK at University of Sheffield. And before the end of the first year, I realized I was absolutely in the wrong career. I was like, man, I do not want to do this. And I'd always had in the back of my head that I wanted to have a business. I wanted to be independent, do my own thing. So I dropped out of med school, absolutely no planning whatsoever. And that was back in 2002. And it was a long, hard road of trying to figure out, because I had no business education, no real estate education. I had no family or friends in that line, or no mentors. It was all science, academia that I was surrounded by. So I really went through a tough time there trying to figure out what I was meant to do. And it wasn't until I tried multiple businesses, failed with them, or not been particularly successful. And it wasn't until 2009, working some part-time jobs, taking jobs when businesses weren't working, that, we had a little bit of money. And then this opportunity came with the market crashing. And we said, hey, $18,000 for a condo, how can you go wrong with that? Let's just try it. And my wife and I jumped in, no real estate experience, and just said, hey, let's rent this thing out and start going. So fast forward to today, I'm now a real estate broker, and my company is Mayfair Real Estate and Property Management. My wife and I own 146 rental units, and we've never raised money to do that. It's all our own stuff. We work with banks, and we manage third party about 700 residential rentals here in South Florida. Like I said, at PAC, that's why I drink and do drugs. So kind of sums it up.
So you're gonna make me give my disclaimer. So the views of Chris Kenny are not the views of BPM RIA and
exactly
and its partners.
So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, guys.
Yeah, and so I know what the audience is thinking. Like, wait, so Chris went to medical school and the Indian guy did not go to medical school, right? Yeah. So appearances.
I love Indian friends. Yeah.
Absolutely. So and the $18,000 condo was here in South Florida, right?
It was in Pompano Beach.
Pompano Beach, and you guys did I remember you guys did the work yourself, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we actually bought 2 condos in quick succession. One was a foreclosure, one was a short sale, a total of $50,000, and that was every single penny that we had saved, and that was saved over years. We both lived really frugally, and we were both working, and yeah, then we basically left ourselves with no money to do renovations, anything. There was ratty carpet in there, old appliances. So we just said, hey, let's go paint ourselves, put up blinds ourselves, clean this, and we rented it out. I did learn the hard way, renting out a not so great unit doesn't get you the best tenants, but hey, first lesson.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, and just so you guys know, you understand his first property was 2009. So that's in 12 years. So like, and now you said 146 units. 146, and you manage 700. There you go. So that's why I'm so amazed at what Chris has done in being in action. And so Ben, you want to talk about like where you've been a little bit and what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm still actively working. Chris can pretty much be retired, and I think so can you, Anish. But I don't own nearly as many rental properties, but I've invested a lot more in recent years as a limited partner in more passive deals, which is good. And really, last year I bought 5 properties for my own account again, just getting back to my roots. But yeah, so when I was 17, I went to one of these 3-day real estate investment seminars and got out and looked at an ad in the Miami Herald, and anyway put a property under contract, and then showed up at the closing table. I signed the contract to another investor. I got a check for $7,000, but there was another person at the closing, and I said, well, who's this guy? Well, that was the actual buyer. The guy that I signed it to flipped it for $100,000. So I left $100,000 on the table. But I was really happy with my $7,000, and I learned to see that as wow, this is inspiring. I'm not going to be upset that I left that on the table. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was working for $15 an hour, $13 an hour in the library at the time, I think, at the University of Miami. So $7,000 was still a lot of money, but it just whetted my appetite to wow. And then I bought a 12-unit apartment building in Coral Gables. It was really Little Havana, and went through that experience and renovated it. And then I said, you know what? And I bought a couple other properties, and I said, I'm going to just do passive investing at this point, which is what I've done for most of my career. And then I'm a realtor, so that's my day job. So I got licensed in 2000, and so I'm heavily involved in the sports side. Probably 50% of my clients are athletes, but I work primarily on the luxury side in South Florida, in Miami-Dade and Broward counties. And so I'll talk a little bit about that for today as well. But I am heavily involved in real estate investing, and really just have a passion for it, and just publishing a book right now about real estate playbook really for athletes, not just investing, but leasing, buying, selling, and investing. But I think going down lots of investment rabbit holes, the 2 things that I can really feel very good about putting my money into are one is Bitcoin, and the other one is real estate. So very different, but both insurance policies, and real estate just such a beautiful investment vehicle with all the tax advantages. And I think, Chris, you mentioned something about the tenants, right? And I've had my share of not so great tenants as well in the Little Havana apartment building particularly. But what I've gravitated to, at least more recently, is buying like nicer properties. So instead of buying like 5 properties in Chattanooga, Tennessee, for instance, I bought 2 properties, and where I'm in Vermont right now, I bought, a luxury property that I will use. So there's that purpose of it, but I will turn it into an Airbnb in a resort town where there's less of a chance of it being, like in Atlanta, just they're clamping down on Airbnbs, right, in certain metro markets. And so doing a little bit of long-term tenant investing, little Airbnb, and a couple of flips that I'm doing as well, rehabs and flips.
That's awesome. So, and I know some of you guys are new. So if you're new, do not ask questions in the chat, guys. Just put it in the Q&A and we'll try to, again, today is just like a relaxed, hanging out. And, as I said, like I've been lucky to hang out with these guys and I've learned a ton from them. So what Ben's not telling you. So how much in sales has your team done in the last 3 years? Just out of
Oh,
curiosity.
we've also had our best last 3 years in the business, but yeah, we've sold over $500 million in real estate in the last 3 years.
So if you're recording, if you didn't hear that right, he said $500 million. That's $500 million of real estate is what his team has sold in the last 3 years with Compass Real Estate. So like, I mean, when I talk, he is the guy, like when it comes to luxury. So, he like, when I tell you, you read all the stuff on the news or CNN and stuff. And when you really have experts like these guys, you actually know the pulse of what's really happening out there too. So it's pretty amazing that, Ben and Chris are both probably the two most humble people I know, but they're killers at what they do too. So, and throughout the webinar, I'm going to throw up some polls too, just so it gives us a good idea. So we're just trying to figure out who's listening in. So how many of you guys are agents? Just pop it in there too. So let's get to, while people start popping in, if they're agents or not agents. And again, you can put in the chat, how's it going if you're an agent, right? Like, are you guys making money? Are you not making money? Just put, yeah, I'm making a ton of money. No, I'm not on that portion. I see some of you guys want to become agents. So I'll start with you, Chris. Like, I know you really focus on multifamily and like you underwrite. And so, and that's the other thing that Chris is not telling you is he's a true expert on multifamily. And, he really knows how to underwrite deals and understands it. I know you have a lot of doors. Are all your doors in South Florida?
Yes.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, like
primarily Broward County.
Okay. Is there a reason why you're picking, like why South Florida just in general?
After that storm just came by, I'm like, this maybe time to diversify a little bit. But is there a reason? Well, I mean, I love the market. And every time I look around, I mean, there are obviously multiple good markets in the United States, but I am super bullish on South Florida just because, well, there are a few reasons. Number one, the in-migration here, both from other states and from outside of the country. We've got great, demographics and population growth that is going to create demand for housing. And then just the fact that, we're down here in South Florida, we really do have, compared to other markets, a limited amount of land still left that can be developed. And therefore, there's really a limited supply at some point. So I kind of look at South Florida as maybe how, not from a political perspective, but maybe how California was, 20, 30 years ago, certain parts of California, right? Where now it's become just incredibly pricey, even though a lot of the fundamentals don't make sense. So I want to buy stuff here. My main reason, I like cash flow, but I want to buy assets in a good market that will appreciate over time.
Yeah, and since you have so many units, let me ask you this: when COVID first happened, right? Like, I mean, I have a little 5-unit building, and we're doing Airbnb. And as soon as it happened, like panicked. I was like, oh my God, we better get some long-term tenants. I don't know what I'm going to do. Obviously, I have reserves and all that other good stuff and safety features. What did you see? Because you had so many units, or you want to tell me, like, how did you, when that first happened, I guess, was it March 2020? Am I right? Yeah. Or is someone right? It's like March or somewhere around there. And like, what did you feel?
My initial thing, I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my goodness. And it's funny because I remember a report being circulated at the end of 2019. I think it was like Cushman Wakefield or one of them. They send every year, they mail a report out on like their forecast for the market the following year. And in there, they had like top 20 things in order of like what could totally tank the economy, because we were at a really great economy. Or like number 20 was like pandemic. And I remember looking at it and I was like, yeah, whatever, that's not going to happen. Right. Yeah. Well, never mind. It happened. Right. So when it happened, my initial gut reaction was like, oh crap. Like, I've always looked at multifamily residential apartments as a super stable investment, but now I'm like, okay, if people can't work, all of a sudden, I mean, what are we going to do here? So I did what any good real estate investor does. So I started making a spreadsheet. So I pulled out Excel, like or Google Drive, whatever, and I'm like, okay, what is like a worst case scenario? And my first go round, I'm like, what if we only collect 50% of rents?
Oh, wow.
How long can we keep this thing going, right? And yeah, we have reserves. Have been big on that since day one, and I think that's a critical point here that you brought up. But yeah, I mean, that's
and your leverage, right? You're meaning you have loans on it. You don't own these free and clear.
So I started calling lenders. I'm like, hey, what are you seeing? What's the plan here? You know. But
yeah, so I mean, it was pretty scary, and that's what I'm saying. I only had a little small, building, so I was like, not panicked, but I was like, oh, that sucks. If anything, the pandemic, it's going to sound funny, that taught me. I did my first virtual rehab locally. I don't know about, I know, so Ben's married, Chris is married too. So my wife didn't let me out of the house because of the pandemic, guys, just in case you guys are wondering. So she's like, she was on the other side, like, you're, like really scared on that end of it. So I literally did a virtual rehab with my contractor on WhatsApp in a house in Margate. And I live in Las Olas. So it's like 20 minutes away. So I didn't know that was possible. So that for me, I was like, wow, like if the pandemic has taught me anything, was like, you got to adapt on that end of it too. So what about you, Ben? Like when, obviously you're on the retail side and you're seeing luxury, what were your thoughts when that first happened? Or not worried?
Yeah, I was worried. I mean, I thought, I had a closing coming up, and I was like, this is probably my last closing for the year, because everything is just going to shut down. And it did for a little while, except for some of the athletes were still running around. And I think I got COVID pretty early, because, they were running around without masks on, smoking weed, doing what athletes do, like being young and invincible. And I was a realtor and I was running around with them. I was like, well, I got to milk this, because these are the only guys out here looking at properties and stuff. So, and then obviously the opposite happened, come June, the market came roaring back. But I think a lot of it, as we talked about with some of the guys at the PAC meeting, is, well, when the money printer, when we expand the money supply by 40%, well, it's like that game of Monopoly analogy that I gave there, which I'll give again here. It's like, so somebody was asking, has the market gone up? And I said, well, you've got a game of Monopoly, and you've got the banker, and you've got a fixed amount of properties and fixed amount of hotels and houses and fixed amount of money in the game. And then let's say half an hour in, the banker says, hey guys, look, here's another $10,000 I'm going to add to the game. What's going to happen to the price of all the properties? They're going to go up. So we all feel in a lot of ways we're getting wealthier, but with what's happening, we've seen it in the UK. I mean, Chris, right now, the UK and in Japan, the US dollar is just devaluing at a lower speed than the rest of the currencies in the whole world. So we're not really getting wealthier per se. But what I like about real estate is that if we have a US dollar or fiat system 5-10 years from now, that's great, but we can't predict that. But we can convert real estate or real property into some other denomination, whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's something else down the road. So that's why I really like the real estate side of it as well. Plus, we can use debt in a way that's like manageable, and so that's a little scary. But yeah, I mean, I think going back to your original question, Nish, I was very concerned and kind of scared about what was going to happen, but then obviously things changed pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny because we like that, and the reason I'm bringing that up was like a lot of we're friends, so like we're open about it. I know a lot of investors, that first 3 to 6 months are like, oh yeah, they're freaked out, and then obviously our market went nuts, right? So like no one talks about that. So if you're new into investing, you got to realize that. And I saw just on that poll, like 1/3 of you guys are realtors. So go ahead and put it in chat, just out of curiosity. How's it being a realtor? Like, what do you love about it? Just a couple of words. I got my real estate license because I thought it would help me with investing, right? So that's what I thought in the beginning too. And if you guys are licensed agents, you realize they do not teach you how to even write a contract, right? They just teach you what not to do. So there's not really a competitive advantage per se. Being a real estate agent is what I've seen. But again, like all three of us are licensed, right? So we do use it in different ways, on our rehabs. Yeah, it's great. I could list it up there. Access to the MLS, but there's other software out there where you could have access to the MLS. It's good for referrals, right? So if you're actually licensed, And you don't want to be an agent, you want to refer it out, and you want to refer luxury clients to Ben. I imagine he'll give you a referral. Do not give him his low end, do not give Uncle Fred there, like, with his $80,000 condo. No, I'm kidding.
I love paying referral fees.
Yeah, so I mean,
I love paying them and giving them.
Exactly. So I think it's always pretty important on that end of it. So one of the things, I don't know if you guys caught, was that, so Ben did his first flip at 17, right? So I think it's kind of funny. You're like, well, it wasn't that much money. And so you're not going to believe, but I'm not going to put you on the spot of how old you are, but I'm going to guess it's 20 plus years ago.
Yeah, I'm 44. So yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah. So yeah, 27 years ago, he made $7,000 on his first deal. That's a lot of money.
But where I found the investor, Anish, was at the local real estate investors club meeting that I went to in Miami. I forget where it was, maybe in Doral somewhere, but I went there. I didn't even have the property under contract yet, but I felt pretty good that I was going to get it under contract. Yeah. And so I stood up at the meeting, raised my hand, and it was through an organization just like yours that allowed me to make that money.
Yeah, absolutely too. So I know Lauren's talking about, like, in the chat a little bit too, is like, when you get your license, and like, lead generation's hard. So, I mean, what about, I might as well ask Ben, since he's way more on the retail side. I'll give you my take on the investment side. What do you think about lead? Like, obviously you said licensed since 2000, right? So you're on 20 plus years. So, what do you think about lead generation, or when you started, I guess, obviously right now?
Well, when I started off in commercial office leasing for 5 years, and I did that. And I ended up working with a mentor. So I was the junior broker, just helping a senior broker. And I think it's not what I did when I got into residential real estate. I started from scratch and just did it the hard way. But I think the smartest way and the path to the most profitability and quickest learning is to join a team, is to join somebody that's more senior, that's expanding their business at a clip that is more than what they can handle. Usually my biggest source of stress in the business is that I have too much that I'm trying to do. And so not having the leverage is very stressful, because I want to deliver like excellent results to every client. So, like my assistant, she never has to bring in any leads per se, but she's making a very nice, salary plus bonus based on what she's helping me do. And, down the road, as I look to do other things and maybe become more of a real estate investor and do less of the active real estate brokerage side, she'll make a ton of money and doesn't have to bring in leads necessarily. I mean, I think she should, and I think every realtor should learn those skills.
Sure.
But, a lot of other people on my team, I give them some deals, but they also have to bring in their own deals as well. So it should be that. But for me, I mean, as far as lead generation, I've never knocked on doors. I've never cold called, never done any of that stuff. It's more just built a personal network.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's this business is really a people business too.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, since you're at Compass, and I mean, you guys are probably the #1 real estate organization. What are you guys seeing on, like, the market's kind of softening, quote unquote, right? Is that everywhere or not? Like, what are you seeing? I know you specialize in luxury. So
so I run my data, Nish, on at the month end. So I just kind of ran my numbers for last month, for September. So I would say like the market peaked in March, from what I could tell. And then, from April, May, June, July, we could tell we weren't in the same market that we were in before, which was like June of 2020 through, let's say, March of 2022 was just market where just everything was going up month over month in a crazy way. And so, I know rents were up about 50% during that time. Some houses were up as much as, I'd say, 75% on the luxury side in that time as well. But I'd say generally throughout South Florida, it's been more like, probably 50 to 60%, depending on the area. But, so things definitely started changing with the economy and, the crypto market being tanked, the stock market being tanked, everything, mortgage rates being so much higher. But then really August and September is when we saw a dramatic shift in the numbers. And this is in the luxury market. So just looking at my notes here, we went from like a 6-month supply to 17-month supply in just like that. We saw the number of, let's say, because my numbers are $2 million and above, so that I'm tracking. So we went from, so what else? We saw a 72% decline in the number of sales. I mean, that's dramatic from one month to the next. So it was like 28 sales to like 10 sales. And then the same thing happened in September. So now we're seeing literally a handful of sales in a month in Miami. So people think about all these mansions. Yeah, there's like 10 of them being sold right now.
Right.
It's crazy, like very little. And then we saw about a 50% plus increase, 57% increase from July into September, into August, as far as new listings. So we went from like 500 and something listings on the market to like 800 and something listings on the market. And that's continued. And we're even above 900 listings now. So I think, and that's just Miami-Dade County. So I think what we're looking at, and that's over $2 million in sales, right? So what we're seeing now is definitely a new shift in the market that the data is supporting. And frankly, I don't see this stopping. I don't see the market getting better from that perspective, at least not until maybe the Fed starts printing more money again, which who knows when and if that'll happen. But with another 75 basis points of tightening probably expected in November, another 75 maybe in December. I mean, I think the Fed is really trying to break the inflation, and they don't care about anything else, including the housing market.
Absolutely.
So probably a great time for investors.
Yeah. And just so like for definition of luxury, you were saying you define luxury over 2 million?
Yeah, but the numbers that I'm pretty clued in on are over 2 million. I'm seeing
million.
more activity from buyers under 1 million, as it turns out, as far as, because I deal across all all price points and condos as well. So I definitely am seeing more action for whatever reason in the sub $1 million market.
Okay, even with interest rates. And then we're even talking about condos. I know in Miami, they're obviously all the pre-construction. Here, I live in Las Olas and Fort Lauderdale. I know all the buildings that are coming up that are approved. And are you seeing a big difference on the luxury versus condos versus single family or in-state, out-of-state, or any of that? Or
no, same trends. I mean, the condo market is pretty much following suit. The condo market lagged the single family home market by about a year. So basically all of 2020, well, not all, but like June through December of 2020 was like basically whittling down 3 years of supply in the luxury market to about 6 months, very fast. I mean, it was like rocket fuel. Everybody wanted a house. And then once people started realizing, oh, I can't find a house, or the house prices are up, 25, 30% at that point in time. This was by end of 2020. Then people started saying, well, I'm going to shift into looking at condos now. So then the condo inventory shrunk quite a bit during 2021. And then during 2021 is when we saw a big shift. Like the pricing increase didn't really happen in 2020. We were just reducing supply of houses. There was a 3-year supply of houses in the luxury market, obviously less than that in the sub $1 million market. But so 2020 was a tale of eating up the market, eating up the inventory, the absorption. 2021 was a tale of the escalation of prices, primarily in single family homes, and then later driven by condos. And then we just got 1 quarter of that in 2022, where we continued to see that. And then all of a sudden things really halted or peaked, I would say, in March of 2020. I'm sorry, March of 2022.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's just funny because like even that little rehab, again, this is like 250, 260 is what we wind up selling it for in Margate. I'm laughing because those prices were super low. We rehabbed it, and I was kind of mad because we did it on time. Right. So we sold it. We would have took, if we were terrible rehabbers and it would have took us an extra 6 months, we probably would have made like an extra 50, 60 grand. So, but that's not the way you want to build a business model in general, but it's pretty interesting. What about, and I'll get to Chris in a second too, but what about like, I know some of these big hedge funds, right? They're moving out of Silicon Valley or out of New York, and they're locating in South Florida, and they're bringing their high-end executives. Has that helped or not really? Or is that just, I don't know.
Yeah. So the latest, that's a good question, because the latest one is Citadel out of Chicago. And I think their least paid employee makes $500,000 a year. Right. And they're bringing like 100 people over here or whatever the number is. But those people are gonna be spread out between like Miami Beach and Aventura, Brickell downtown, Coral Gables, Pinecrest, Coconut Grove. Some will be condos, some will be single family. And the other thing too is that we're seeing, because Compass, we're one of the preferred vendors on the relocation side there. A lot of them are going to rent first. And so that's an interesting thing too, because with the rental market, I think there was an article in the Miami Herald about this just yesterday or the day before about Hurricane Ian displacing a lot of the snowbirds that would normally go to the west coast of Florida or the southwest coast of Florida. And even people that live there that are all going to be relocating to South Florida, Dade and Broward counties, maybe Palm Beach as well. So that'll be interesting. I think it's too early to see what's happening with the hurricane. And I think we're not seeing a huge bump in the market. I don't think, though, to answer your question directly, I don't think that is enough to dent the overall larger state of the housing market in general. But I think South Florida will be more well insulated than other areas for sure.
Wow. Yeah, you know, it's funny. I didn't even think about obviously the obvious of the hurricane and you know, the snowbirds. I didn't really think about it. I just figured they wouldn't come. I don't know. It wasn't, you know, it was really not a conversation, but that makes sense. I guess it's a good way, especially if you own some Airbnbs and, you know, they want to be here, you know, short term, 3 or 4 months. You know, it's probably a good killing for you too. So
Antonio Lopez is going to make even more money. So
I know Antonio's going to run a, you know, and so some of you guys, if you guys may have seen Antonio on some of our webinars, he's got a couple big Airbnbs down here in some neighborhoods that you would not really think it'd be Airbnb friendly, and he does very well there too. So Chris, on your side, right, let me ask you on the multifamily, as like, let's talk about first like acquisition. Can we kind of break it down on like smaller units versus, I don't know, what do you want to do, like 10 or less, like meaning if I'm an investor and I'm sitting on cash, right, and what can I expect on, you know, maybe per door or realistic on cap rate, or, you know, without getting too nerdy, because Chris is nerdy with the spreadsheets like I am, and Ben, everyone will drop off the call in a second if we start getting into IRR and talking nerd stuff. So
I'm not going to get too nerdy, because honestly, Ben seems like he's super up to date on the market with that stuff. So I keep track of all this, obviously from just a boots on the ground perspective, out making offers and helping others do the same. And then, you know, paying attention to the news and what's going on in there. And just honestly, a lot of this stuff, it ties back to rentals, right? Rents and rent amounts, but we can get into that later. But I mean, so there's definitely been a shift the past couple of months, right? So up till a couple of months ago, you know, I would even say like a typical 10 unit and under, if you're just to average out, you know, across the county, like 150,000 a door.
Class level B or C or?
Yeah, B, even C. I mean, we're starting to get to the point where it's like, wow, I can't believe this stuff is 150,000 a door, 170,000 a door, right?
And I'm going to stop being nerdy for a second. So, Kate, do you want to explain class levels on multifamily? We're just assuming everyone knows what A, B, and C is. A quick little definition.
Yeah, sure. I mean, A class would be what you're seeing going up downtown, like new construction, luxury apartment buildings, right? That's super nice stuff. B class might be near to those properties, but they may be older construction, maybe older amenities, that sort of thing. And then the C class, you start getting into workforce housing and that sort of thing. And then D is kind of war zone neighborhoods.
Absolutely. And so, where's your, I didn't even ask you, but I mean, I know, what class do you like the most? Like, what are you really in?
So it's interesting because Ben touched on this earlier. He was talking about, he's made a shift to not buying 5 units, get 2 in a more quality area. I feel like I've almost gone the opposite way, which I'm probably not supposed to, but we started out when I got in, my first multifamily deal was Victoria Park in Fort Lauderdale back. And that was the first multifamily was 2014, and it was a little triplex. And what we were doing then and what was working really well, and it was kind of before everyone had picked up and was really cranking these out, but we bought this older triplex. Victoria Park, I would say, is like it's a really nice neighborhood, but that's like kind of B class, maybe, you know, or downtown would be A class, right? But we were buying these old apartment buildings and then renovating the apartments and really cranking up the rents, right? So our typical demographic that was renting there and still rents there, we own a bunch of stuff in Victoria Park now, so is millennials, right? Typically young professionals, you know, want to be close to downtown, live, work, play environment, don't want to pay the sky high prices in Class A. But there was not as much new construction Class A stuff going up when we started there, right? So what ended up happening, and you're never really competing with that. We're not competing with that because our rents, you know, back then for a 1-bedroom, we were probably getting $1,250, $1,300. This is back then, right? And the new stuff going up, it was like $1,800 for a studio, right? So we're not directly competing. But those types of neighborhoods have really gotten incredibly expensive to buy in, and it's very hard to find cash flow. I mean, and it's really like there are big companies coming from out of state that are big, you know, private equity firms scooping up a lot of stuff, and they're more concerned about IRR, right? But not to get nerdy on it, and less about cash flow. But I need to pay my debt, right? So I need cash flow positive properties. The other thing tied to the market here that we're seeing, because all of these costs have been going up, the reason everyone's developing type A luxury apartment buildings is that's where they can actually make the numbers work, right? They have to achieve sky high rents in order to be able to afford the cost of the land, the labor, the materials, right? So what they're not really making these days, and they haven't been for a while, is affordable working class housing. So that's when I started looking, when it was becoming harder to find the good, deals in where we're repositioning for like young professionals. I said, okay, well, maybe we need to look at some alternative strategy. So we started buying workforce housing, right? So existing Class C, I would say, and doing the same type of thing, upgrading them. But now it's a different demographic that is renting in there. And the reason I like that is what I'm saying. There's a limited supply of that product, and they're not really developing it. And we are having all this in migration from these $500,000 salaried executives, right? But they're going to spend money at restaurants. They're going to do all this other stuff. And with all of that comes a need for service professionals and all the support professionals. And they need a place to live. They can't afford, $2,000 studios. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the first question you asked me, but that's kind of.
Yeah, no, because it makes a big difference on that end of it. And so like on the, for, what I do, some of you guys already know, but, we wholesale, rehab, all the above. And I pulled up the Broward County numbers. So, or actually the 3 counties. So in the last week, there's been 500 pre-foreclosures between the 3 counties. Broward County has over 6,000 pre-foreclosures right now. Only 2 to 3% are for sale. Right. So what that means is some people are going to go to foreclosure, right? The bank's going to take it. Some people are going to do loan modifications, right? And they're going to have a workout. And some people are, what else are they going to do? They're going to sell to investors for a short sale because they don't want to have a deficiency judgment. That's the only, opportunity that they have. And then guess what? They're going to look for rentals. And that happens all the time when we're actually, doing these short sales. They're like, well, where am I going to find something? Right. So maybe I should lead them to, if you have any openings on your occupancy, I should push them your way on that end. But that's what we're seeing on the trend. Right. So, even like when the boom was happening, right, or all that stuff, foreclosures were still going up on the back end. They just weren't listed on the market. The other thing that we've noticed also is bankruptcies have gone up in the last 6 months. It's almost up 25%. Why is that important for us? Usually, if you've never been through a foreclosure and lost everything like I did, first of all, I'm going to just tell you it sucks. It's the worst feeling ever out there. You speak to some of the attorneys and what they'll tell you is, hey, rule number 1, you want to keep your place or stay in there longer, file a bankruptcy, right? So that's usually the first step. The thing that most homeowners don't understand is that's just a temporary solution. I cannot tell you how many homeowners that I spoke to that, I did a bankruptcy, I get to keep my house. And I was like, wait, really? You think that, huh? And it's so surprising because guess what? I'd buy a house for $3 million tomorrow, make a couple of payments, file bankruptcy. And if I could keep the $3 million house, yeah, that's fine versus my credit. Obviously it doesn't work that way. So it's definitely changed dramatically on that portion. And if you're acquiring more properties, Chris, how are you how did you get your original properties? Were you doing mailers? I know you're a broker. How did you get those? And if you're acquiring now, what do you what's your strategy? Or if you're on hold too, it doesn't matter.
I'll get to that. So when I initially started out, again, didn't really know what I was doing. So I joined a brokerage and started listening to what they were telling me. So I did actually go knocking on doors in neighborhoods, which is a brutal way to try and get deals. I mean, that's tough. But I did get my first real deal by doing that, selling a neighbor's house to another neighbor, which was kind of funny. But what I found, what was a game changer for me and what started tons of leads coming in back then, remember this was when I got my license, I was actually 2012, and there were lots of foreclosures and short sales still working their way out of the system. So direct mail worked really well for me. So I started doing a ton of that, yellow letters, that type of deal, and setting up seller appointments, and actually was doing a good amount of wholesaling, assignments, that sort of thing, as well as using my license in order to make the money to then buy the rentals. But my game was always, I want to buy rentals for long-term wealth building.
Absolutely. And Yeah, and that's the same thing we do, right? We teach that all the time, depending on your marketing budget. When I first started, like didn't have much marketing budget. So yeah, I had software, guess I'm knocking on doors, sending letters. What we found is just in general, it's easier to say no on the phone, right? Versus in person. I love technology. The problem is what I've seen is a lot of people want the easy way out. This is still a people business and trust factor. Whether you're an agent, right? And you're working with Ben, they trust him, right? And they have that feeling, or, same thing with Chris, he actually has proof of funds. He could actually close on that portion. So I'm going to actually just put a quick poll up here. Like, 'cause I'm always curious, like, we're talking about different parts of real estate. So, what part excites you in real estate? And, for me, like, I think the important thing is that you have to get out there. And so I'm kind of laughing. Chris had, quit medical school, and no real estate experience. Ben goes to a RIA meeting and kind of figures it out and gets his first deal. What was it? The Miami Herald or Craigslist? No, there was probably no Craigslist back then.
No, it was Miami Herald. Yeah.
Well, right. And you did that. And, same thing for me. Like, after I lost everything, I got something under contract. I put $500 down. I had no intention of closing. I wholesaled it and assigned the contract. I made $2,000. I was beyond excited, right? I 4x'd my money, right? Everyone today is like, oh, you only made 2,000. I'm like, 4 times my money. I was not planning on doing anything, right? And I'm still more excited about those deals. I know it sounds kind of funny, than the $100,000 deals I made wholesaling, because like now I've gotten better at what I do. So it's just one of those things that, it kind of changes quickly. I see you guys are putting stuff in the poll. So, it seems like a little bit of a combination of everything. I'm just kind of laughing at, like, no one wants to say it. They don't want to be a successful real estate agent.
And no one wants to be a realtor. I don't take offense. I don't really either.
Yeah,
no, be an
exactly.
investor.
I know, exactly. So that's why we're kind of laughing on that end of it too. So, so Chris, the second part I didn't let you answer was, like, if you were looking for multifamily, right? The market is like, what would you, like, I know you have a lot of connections and you're like, people know you when you close. So you have a different end of it like I do. But if you were newer and you wanted to get into multifamily,
That's tough. I feel like that is tough right now, because it's you are competing with some very successful people. And I'm an optimistic person, right? And I believe you can achieve this stuff, but you gotta hustle. You really gotta work hard. There is definitely no quick fix, but you can work out almost. You can outwork almost anyone when you're new and hungry and have that, like, where it's like, I want to succeed at this no matter what. That will be your advantage, right? But there is to second your point, Anish, like getting face to face with people, building connections. That's the way to go. So I would probably, if I was starting today, I would still be doing direct mail. I'd still do that, not as much as I did, but I would certainly do the direct mail thing. And I would get out to like local RIAs, go knock on doors at properties, like go talk to tenants at a building, look for the rundown building in the neighborhood, go talk to one of the tenants, say, hey, I'm a handyman. I want to talk to your landlord about repairing this, getting some repairs done here, get some business, and they'll put you in touch with the landlord real quick. Right. Yeah. So yeah,
absolutely. And so, like, if you guys, and Chris and Ben, if you notice, like, so 40% of you guys want to be active investors, 20% passive, and some of you guys are really into multifamily. And I know some of you guys put other, and if you put other, gotta put in the chat. I'm just kind of curious what you guys are, when you say other part of real estate. I'm curious what else you might be interested too. Finally, one person said they want to be a successful realtor. So Ben, was that you? I'm kidding.
It wasn't me. But like the one thing is, because I always feel like I'm missing out on opportunities because I'm selling stuff that I wouldn't buy. It wouldn't be stuff that I would invest in. So I think, Chris, to your point, it's so hard to make the numbers work in South Florida. And so for me, because I am working actively and making money and just trying to put that money into something else, like, I'm not as concerned about the cash flow either right now. I'm more concerned about, using leverage, like locking in cheap long-term debt. Even at 6%, it's still cheap, relatively speaking, if we look at it historically. But I was able to lock in some properties at 3.25% earlier this year. So I'm glad I did that. And now I'm trying to have Anish mentor me a little bit on how to to, become a smarter finance person with personal finance and accelerating the mortgage and some of those things through Finance Academy. But yeah, I think that's why I looked out of state. I said, I'm not going to try to compete with like stupid money that just wants to buy South Florida property. And then I read David Green's book, Long Distance Real Estate Investing, which is a great resource, easy to read. And I said, yeah, this makes sense. I'm going to find a realtor so I started looking at other markets. I said, okay, where are people moving to? To Chris's point, the in-migration to South Florida, but there's other areas, you look at Atlas Van Lines or some of these studies that moving companies do, and you look at the census data and read and start looking at it and saying, okay, I'm going to be a real estate person and look at different trends, demographic trends, who are the employment centers here, all these different things. What is the state income tax? What are the real estate taxes like here? What is it like to get insurance? I mean, obviously trying to buy Florida property is tough because the insurance is crazy. And I don't see it getting any better. I mean, I think a couple of weeks ago, I read about another insurance company that just said, we don't have enough funds to service the claims if we get one. And then there was a hurricane coming in after that. So I bought in other areas, like in Chattanooga, for instance, is one that I mentioned to you both that I bought a couple properties in, and I want to buy more there because it checks off a lot of boxes. And so I don't think we have to limit ourselves to South Florida either.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the funny part is, you're right. So I always kind of talk about like investing, so usually both coasts, right? East Coast, West Coast, all the way up and down. We usually get a lot of appreciation. The cash flow is so-so. The Midwest, the appreciation doesn't go up that much, right? So I kind of joke about it. So if anyone's from Ohio, don't send me some hate mail or anything. But like you buy a house, for $30,000 about 5-6 years ago, it's probably worth like $37,000, right? But it rents and you're great on cash flow on that portion. So for a long term, it really makes sense depending on what, you got to have a team, right? So you got to have some boots on the ground, and Chris will definitely tell you that. That's why I think you started your own property management company, because it became a pain in the neck when you don't have boots on the ground or good people there. And my problem with, like this is my own personal issue on that is, a house for 35, 40,000, the roof is still going to cost X amount, right? Materials are materials. And so if you don't build that in your cost, right? Because I always hear long-term investors, they'll say, oh yeah, I bought it for this and I sold it for this, or it's worth this. They never add in like, oh, I had to redo the kitchen or I had to redo the bathrooms, right? I'm making this amount of money. I'm like, oh yeah, but I had to put 20,000 in 2 years ago. 100%, you have to, keep your properties up to date, but are those your real numbers, right? So like, with inflation, right? Let's talk about the big, right? Everyone, inflation. The thing is like, let me ask both of you guys, what's like, has inflation really affected your business in general?
I can answer that one. It's affected my business in a good way because our rents have gone up like crazy over the past year and a half, right? I think we just got our results for last month on our renewals, and the average renewal increase last month was like 27%, right? Wow. And we've had consistently month over month, we're high teens, low 20s on rent increases across our portfolio. And it's just been over and over again. Now we're starting to see maybe a little bit of a change in that, but to address inflation, I mean, that's one of the big pros for owning real estate in general, but especially multifamily or residential real estate, because inflation goes up, rents tend to follow that.
Yeah, it's a good leverage, right? Like that's the whole point of it, is that rarely. And so if you guys own properties, it's just a rule of thumb. I don't care if they've been long-term tenants, right? You got to raise, I don't care if it's $50 or, whatever number that is. Like, do you always raise? I mean, I might as well just ask.
Pretty much always. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Unless an owner, if it's third-party management, an owner specifically requests that we do not, we're building in rent increases. It's training your residents to expect that, even if it's a small one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, since it's multifamily, right, let's talk about why obviously besides cash flow, what does it do to the value of your building when a lender looks at it?
Oh, it cranks it up, right? Because it increases your net operating income. So that's just your total income less your operating expenses gives you net operating income, or NOI. And the formula for for value, not to get too geeky, but for to value in a multifamily apartment building, you take the NOI and you divide it by the market cap rate, and that will give you a value. So assuming the cap rate staying the same over the course of a year or whatever, and you bump rents, then you're increasing the top number, the bottom number stays the same. So your value is going to go up, and it's a geometric increase. It's not just a straight line.
Yeah, and so that the reason you want to do that is especially if you're using leverage. So when we say leverage, the easiest way think of leverage as other people's money, right? So banks' money, private money, and besides rents, other people's money is a great way to hedge yourself against inflation, right? So I kind of joke about it. Some of like our students, it is a perfect example. They have zero money in the deal. Do you think they're worried about inflation? No. Guess what? They're pushing the inflation on me. I'm okay with it because there's money in the deal. I'm fine with that. And there's a lot of people out there as deal makers, as you start getting better, it's something you want to do, right? I know Catherine's, I'm going to hit some questions too. So Catherine's asking, Chris, how many units do you usually go for? And do you specialize in syndication, or what approach do you go for when funding your deals?
Okay, so I'll answer the latter part first.
Yeah.
We're actually pretty boring on that side. I use like traditional bank financing for the most part. I've got good relationships with local commercial banks, so like regional type banks. I like those because you can typically build a relationship with the loan officers or the lenders directly, and it makes it a lot easier to do deals. And so that's financing, and then just money that we've saved or pulled out of another property when we've done a refi, right? So we started small and just kept snowballing that. So pulling out the equity, so we'd increase the rents, get a refi done at an increased value, because the increasing rents increase the value in the multifamily building. We then pull out the equity and put it into the next one and repeat, right?
What's the time period on that? Like just when you say increase rent, it's refinance, like you get into a property acquisition, right? Yeah. You get it up and running.
It depends on obviously the scope of how much you need to do to be able to affect those rent increases. Some can be very quick, right? So it's just mismanaged building versus having to do any renovations. So there's a lot of value add there, actually. If you just manage a building well, you can create a lot of value. So that can be a quick turnaround where we can do a refi, in 12 to 18 months. The lender usually wants to see you've held it for a while and prove, cash flow, and they want to see the debt service coverage ratio. We've done it as short as 6 months with commercial lender. On the longer end, maybe 3 years to do a refi if you've got a large turnaround project, heavy renovations. And to answer the other part of the question, how many units do I normally go for? So like we started with whatever we could get our hands on. It was small. Now I typically would be looking at minimum 10 units. I prefer like 20 units. But if it's a really nice location, I picked up a fourplex last year right over by the beach because I love the location. I'm like, hey, I'm doing it.
Yeah. So, you're flexible, but again, you got to remember Chris is, over 10 years of experience as he's building his business. For you newbies, right? If you're looking for a place, you can house hack, right? So you could still do an FHA loan if it's still under the limit. I think the limits, and actually when I have Jason come up from Smart Home Loans, he'll tell me, but I think the conventional loan limits, and I think it went up to over 650. Don't hold me to it off the top of my head. But it's a great way to actually buy a unit or a duplex, triplex, fourplex. It's considered single family for lending. So you could actually live in one and rent out the other units. So that's, again, you do need, financing, credit. There's other programs out there, but it's a good way to get into the business is what I tell people too on the house hack.
I say one other thing, actually touching back to right at the beginning, I'll tell you a decision that my wife and I made that, for those of you who are brand new and looking, how do you start? So we saw all of our friends go out and with the money they had saved, go buy a house to live in, right? We made a decision with the money we saved to buy a rental property and instead continue to rent the place that we lived. And within a year, the rentals that we were giving to other people, they were nicer than the place we were living in. We're just like, how do I stay in the cheapest rent possible so I can buy more property? But I think people are sometimes unwilling to make those types of sacrifices at the beginning. But if you make those choices, then it pays off a lot of times, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I agree with you on that end of it. And what about syndication? Like we've kind of talked
Oh,
about
sorry, I
that.
didn't answer
Yeah.
that one. So yeah, I currently I've never done an actual syndication. I have partnered with people, like a small group, like 2 or 3 guys, when we've all had an active role in the deal somehow. But currently do not syndicate. I'm evaluating whether I want to do that or not.
Yeah. So I mean, you want to define syndication in case for the newbies?
Sure, that's basically, and again, I'm not a pro on that, but that's basically when you go out and raise capital from passive investors. So I would say, hey guys, I've got a deal. This is my team. We're going to make this deal happen. Here's the plan for it. Do you want to put $1 million into it? And we go out and get $100,000 from 10 investors to buy the deal with us. And we would put some money into that as well. So
yeah, and what I'm just going to tell you, if you guys are new, like I know people want to get into multifamily or commercial, but they have no experience. So like what I tell you, get your feet wet, do a couple even smaller deals. You heard Chris talk about his first deal was $18,000. Ben's talking about his first, assignment contract was a $7,000 profit. I'm talking about my big $2,000. So like, I guess I'm the loser on this. Like you guys are crushing it compared to what I made on stuff. But like, like you're seeing more of a finished product. You're talking about, 20 years later, we've all started somewhere. I know D, you're asking about owner financing. So I love owner financing. So the 5-unit building that I bought was owner financing. An accountant, we thought we were actually overpaid for the price, but we're okay because we only came out with 10% of the money. So I was fine with it. And our rate back then was about 6% interest only. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And, it's been cash flowing. We use other strategies, including Airbnb on there too. So for us, it's making a killing. We probably more than doubled our money if we wanted to sell it. But I'm in the same point, like, what am I going to do with the money? I don't need the money right now. I'm about, cash flow and, I'm just reinvesting on that portion too. So I think that's always important when it comes to that. I know I put this poll up here. So, the number one item stopping you from successful in real estate. So 38% of you guys, money for deals, right? Evaluating deals, competition. Ben, what would you say? Like, I know you're, for money for deals. I mean, you're talking about, your first deal. Like, how much money did you actually put down on that assignment or that first contract?
I didn't put anything down on that deal. And that was actually the best, return deal that I've done, because all the other deals have been with putting some of my own money down.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the assignment, I went to the open house and kind of charmed the old principal of the school, who I got under contract for like $90,000. And then, the guy ended up buying it for, the guy who ended up paying the guy that I signed it to ended up buying it for over $100,000 or over $200,000.
Wow. That's
A
amazing.
little over that.
What about, like, I know so many people are talking about competition, whether as a realtor or an investor. So my take on the competition, surprise, surprise, there's always going to be competition, right? So if you think that, where there's going to be no competition, we're not coming up with something new. So you're going to have to be able to time the market as an investor. There's no such thing. It's kind of like timing the stock market on that end of it. You have to get in there. I just call that a conversation, right? Like that's just something that, I don't know, like, as I said, like that, there's too many people in our market. Well, the good end of it is if you're flipping houses like I am or wholesaling, guess what? You have a lot of buyers, right? If you're in a super rural area, I don't know what I'm trying to think of where in the US, like super rural, but imagine, how many buyers are you going to have there, right? You found a great deal. The comps make sense, but if you don't have the money or to close on it, or you don't have multiple exit strategies, right? I know that's one of the things actually we didn't talk about is multiple exit strategies, right? So depending on, you're like Ben's in a different market, Chris is doing some different things, I'm in our local market doing things. Whenever I evaluate a house, I have multiple exit strategies on that portion. So I don't know, Ben, you want to talk about even like the houses in Chattanooga on that? Do you have multiple, like what happens? You're using leverage and everything, goes to heck. When you were buying it, you weren't just saying, hey, the realtor in Chattanooga said it's a great spot.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing I want to say about competition is, there's competition in everything that seems good. there's competition, but I think as a realtor, we're very competitive. And so when I become my unhappiest is when I start comparing myself to other realtors. Oh, why didn't I get that deal? Or why is this person doing so well? But I'm not comparing myself in every aspect of our lives as far as like our family structure, how much we're actually working, happiness levels, all these things, right? But it's more just, okay, my strategy is I'm going to build my network. I'm going to focus on my network. That's what I have to focus on. So I think for any of us, if we start to focus on competition, then that's the losing strategy. The right strategy is pick a strategy and then just go educate yourself around it and do the work. Anish, as you said, just go hustle, right? Like that's what we have to do. I think as far as the exit strategy, yeah, I mean, the house that I'm in right now, for instance, I could do a long-term rental. I can do Airbnb because it's in a resort market where, like I mentioned earlier, like I like the Airbnb specifically because like the town of Stowe, where I'm in right now, they don't have enough hotels to support the tourism. I mean, right now it's like leaf peeping season. The streets are clogged. Like everybody's out staring at all the leaves on the trees, right? It's beautiful, but there's not enough hotels to service all these people. And then during ski season, same thing. During the summer, same thing. So they have to rely on local people's homes that they offer up through Airbnb. And so, yes, I could make more money if I Airbnb it than if I long-term rent it, but I have a couple strategies there. I do have debt on this one. I chose not to put debt on the two that I bought in Chattanooga because I wanted to stabilize them first. And so I am cash flowing, and those two properties pay for my mortgage in Miami. So, like that was my strategy there. I'm not going to put debt on those because I want, if something happens to me, yes, I have disability insurance and, whatever, but I don't want to have to worry about my mortgage in Miami. And I think to Chris's point also, like I live below my means, like I'm in all these like multi-million-dollar homes every day, but I don't live in a multi-million-dollar home. I don't need that to be happy. So I think that's the other thing is like, can we, forego some of the happiness that or some of the consumption that we want right now and just put that off in the future? And I think there's so many aspects to this. One is like the fear of competition. Second one is that maybe we don't have a strategy. We're trying to do too much. We're like, going over here, over here, over here. Like I listen to you, Anish, and how you wholesale. And I'm like, man, I would love to do that. But you know what, realistically, for my skill set and where I am in life, like I'm not going to become a wholesaler right now. But what I can do, given the time that I have, is I can learn about, debt and how to use that more appropriately. And I can take my income and go buy properties in this market that I think I really like and, hire a really good property manager and understand the numbers. I can do that. And so I think like we're all in different phases of life and just start executing on one strategy before trying to do everything else. And then to your point, making sure that the strategy we execute on is that we don't over leverage. I think that's really the key is if we don't have the money, that's fine, but maybe there's a different strategy. Maybe it's more wholesaling or flipping than it is, buying properties for cash, which is my strategy right now, and then putting some debt on it once I stabilize them.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, there's a lot of cash out there. Right. So if you find good deals, right. So I'll even plug myself. If you find a good deal, like sell it to me. I might partner with you. We have a massive list. I'm sitting on a bunch of cash. Go ahead, spend my money. I'm going to make my money. I want these guys to spend my money because I'll actually make a return. The return with my wife is negative. it's bad cash flow that I'm having on my personal life, but that's okay though. But it's just one of those things that you want to be able to evaluate also. This is really for Chris. Alejandro's asking, how much percentage increase have you raised residential and commercial rents, or what do you think is a normal? I know you said 27%, but what do you think would be?
Coincidentally, I would say since this kind of the market, I guess since the COVID stuff happened, rents have come up. I would say they got to be at least 50%, maybe more, on most properties. It's ridiculous, and the demand has not stopped. It's just nonstop. We have a full-time leasing assistant who is just on the phone, and we look at those metrics each month. And last month she had over 2,000 calls that she attended to, or at any given time we may have 5 to 10 units on the market for rent.
Wow.
Not a lot.
So like that's what I'm saying is that, there's a lot of room out there, if you own, right? Like, it shouldn't be that hard if you have a good team and obviously do the right work of, vetting your tenants also. I know we're a little bit short on time, but that might be another workshop that we might do with you, Chris, is talk about, having the right tenants and not losing.
I can talk about that for an hour. Easy.
and like losing money on the back end on poor management. You know, like I've seen that so many times when I've evaluated buildings, and when I look at their income and expenses, and when I see a massive legal fee, I'm like, oh, that means evictions, poor management. You know, like that almost, you could tell right away that they're doing not a good job on that. Prince asking to net 25,000 or so by Christmas. What would you recommend someone starting from scratch? And the fastest way is wholesaling, right? So if you don't know what wholesaling, you buy low and you sell low, you get something under contract. The game that you need to play is to talk to sellers, right? So I call it like, I don't know about you guys, like, because I know you guys run into a lot of realtors, investors, hey, I want to get investing, and all they do is research. I'm like, well, okay, great. How many people have you talked to? No, I'm still doing research. I'm like, it's 5 years later. You're still doing research, right? Like, I'm kind of joking about that, but you have to go out there, and these guys kind of talk about too. I would say start with one strategy first, right? But I've seen too many people, Monday I'm going to buy tax deeds, but Tuesday I'm going to do seller financing. Wednesday I'm going to do lease options. Oh, Thursday I have a real estate client, right? Oh, by the way, I'm going to find a multifamily unit by Friday, right? And each one of these things are experts. Again, like you're talking to Chris, Ben, myself. We're not, like, I'm not an expert on luxury. There's no chance. I don't have the patience that Ben. God bless you, Ben. Man, I tried it a little bit. You're a way better person than I'll ever be when it comes to your luxury clients. That I've sold a couple, multi-million-dollar homes, but I just couldn't stomach it on that end of it. And the same thing with the multifamily. It's different. Chris really has an appetite on that, and to be able to evaluate on properties. So I think it's always important on that. When it comes to that. I guess we're actually almost out of time, which is so crazy. So why don't we kind of do a little recap? Like, so let's start with, what do you guys really think about the market, right? Like on each, I don't know, in your specialty or overall, or on the real estate market, like, should everyone quit real estate and do nothing? And I want all you guys to leave real estate, investing, because it's going to be more deals for me. So yeah. So okay, Chris, I'll let you start first. Like,
my take on the market right now. So it's a little, I think it's a little tricky to tell. I'm honestly, I'm on a holding pattern unless I come across something that is a really, really good deal. I think when there's a little bit of uncertainty, right? So these interest rates have been going up, and I agree with Ben, they are still historically not that high. But the problem on the multifamily side is that cap rates are still low, and there's a lot of money chasing deals. So once those cap rates are below what interest rates are at, it's really hard to make the numbers work. So it's really about, if you're going to buy something, either you need to put a lot less leverage on it, or find an amazing deal. On the rental side, I think, which is interesting to look at, although we've had really strong rents and rent increases up until recent months, we're definitely starting to notice a little bit of a shift in the rental listings that we have. In fact, we've got more listings right now than we've had in quite a while. And we've also noticed in some properties, people are struggling a little more with paying their rent on time. And still, we're collecting the same amount of rent by the end of the month, but we're definitely noticing that people are feeling the pinch with the inflation numbers, especially in the workforce housing, right? So it's interesting to see how it all will pan out. On the other hand, and also our evictions filings have gone up over the past couple of months, right? We've had to, unfortunately, it's part of the business. And what we're noticing there is, once a unit vacates, there's still this incredible demand for units. It's just in the workforce housing. So things are shifting. It's hard to say exactly how it's going to play out long term, but I'm kind of taking a wait and see approach. I still believe in residential rentals as a very strong
and specifically South, Florida market, right? You're talking, because I know you're mainly here too. So okay.
Yep. But I mean, the wholesaling short term, especially if you're getting into this, I think is a great way to go, because you're not tying yourself to something. It's in and out, right? So you're not taking that risk.
Absolutely. And Ben, what are you seeing on whether it's luxury or real estate in general, and you could talk about, because you're in multiple markets as as a principal, and because of Compass, like I know because of your network, you sell in multiple markets too. So
Yeah, I mean, I would say that generally it makes sense that the real estate's usually like 6 months behind the stock market, and so it makes sense that we're now starting to see the data that supports a much slower real estate market. And so, from an investor's perspective, I'm starting to get a little bit more excited. I think I'm going to, like Chris, wait a little while, because personally, I think it makes sense for us to be defensive, maybe a little bit more defensive now, certainly than before. I think we need to make sure that we, like Ray Dalio talks about, it's like a very simple formula. It's like income, expenses, and savings. Like, how do you get through this time, right? So I think if the next year, 2 years, 3 years, a little bit messy, a little bit hiccupy, it's like, okay, I'm not going to try to get wealthy right now necessarily. I just want to make sure I stay the course and don't lose any of my properties in foreclosure, that my family's healthy, that I can keep the right mindset. Like, this may not be the time that we're going to crush it. We just have to like get through this. But as we know, when people are, feeling the pinch and that kind of thing, that presents opportunities. And so I think, like Chris said, I'm going to wait. I'm not right now, I'm not in a position where I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to deploy cash rather than having sitting in my savings account, losing money. In some ways, like, cash is actually looks a lot better than a lot of other alternatives right now. So I think just to build a position of cash to allow ourselves to kind of have that rainy day and pick off opportunities. And then, for those of you that are starting out, like Anish said, there's ways to do it without cash. I mean, there's plenty of cash on the sidelines. So build up that personal network, right? Which is what I do every day, which is what we all should be doing, irrespective of anything else, is build up a personal network. Because when we need a friend, when we need a helping hand, when we want an investor for our deal, like, it's all of our personal networks that we're going to. So I think, building these, these skills during this time right now, building cash and looking for the right deals and not over leveraging. Because I think that's where all of us real estate people get hammered too much, is if we're just not accounting for that. And then things go sideways. And we have, like in the UK right now, they have a lot of short-term interest or short-term loans that are resetting. So that property market, I think, is going to go down much faster. At least here, most of these loans are longer term, mortgages are longer term. But Absolutely. In the UK, I think there's a major opportunity for people, investors over there. So yeah, anyway, I just think it's, I'm personally just looking to be a little bit more defensive right now.
Absolutely. And so and you're going to laugh. So I'm obviously the opposite. And we're in different spots. So I'm ready to crush it, meaning, I'm super optimistic, and I'll tell you why, right? So more houses in foreclosure, pre-foreclosure, Broward County, there's over 6,000 probates, right? So I hate to say it, people come here to retire. We had a national speaker that does residential assisted living. And when he spoke here, he goes, you know what Florida is? It's such a bad joke. He's like, it's God's waiting room, right? So I'm like, that's pretty messed up, but pretty funny. I get it, so like there's a lot of opportunity out there. Chris is talking about, workforce, right? There's not many homes out there. We're boots on the ground talking to people. I hate to say it, people still, the foreclosure numbers are up. Eviction numbers, I agree with Chris. Eviction numbers are up, and some of the landlords are like, hey, I might have a portfolio of 10 houses, but that one house is haunted, right? It's Halloween. Whoever I put in there, they get evicted. They drive me nuts. So we're, sitting with cash, we can move fast. The other thing is, guess what? A lot of people, especially in South Florida, surprise, surprise, they're fixing houses without permits, right? There's issues, code violations, all the above. Making a killing on that, fixing it. We had a deal that we actually showed the guys, or actually I did it in one of the webinars, is that we bought a house for $33,000 in Pompano, and we wholesaled it for 200 plus on that. So $33,000. If you ever email, I don't remember the address off the top of my head. I'll even show you. You can look it up on public records. So the idea is to find deals out there, and especially if you're hungry, right? So you got to remember where Ben's at, right? He's been doing this for a long while. He's been building cash flow, right? He's working on a lot of different things. Chris has got, a gazillion units, right? So it's not an issue for him. I'm in between, right? Like, I'm still hungry. I still want to double my money. I lost everything in 2009. So I'm like, I have that feeling like I'm way behind. And for those people that have lost, I sometimes have old timers. The reason I bring that up is I'm not special. If I could do it, you could do it, right? Don't let what happened to you, hold you back. If real estate's your passion, go out there and get that. I think, our market, I can't tell you how many people, the hedge funds, I kind of joke about it, they're still buying in South Florida, right? So they're not knocking on doors, guys, right? They're not doing any of that. They're buying it from wholesalers like us, right? I kind of joke about them. They're like the big cruise ship. I just follow what they do. We're in a little speedboat. We just get there in front of them on that portion. So this is a great time. And, for me personally, I always kind of joke about, I mean, Chris is talking about the house he bought for $18,000, that condo in 2009. Some of us, we sit there, old timers, and talk about, oh, I wish everything was like 2010 or 11. Like that was easy. It was, a great time to be in real estate. I feel, right, the great thing, these things are recorded, right? And it's on our YouTube channel. I think in 2027, we're going to be like, oh, it was so easy in 2022 and 23. Interest rates were X. I can't believe this. And I wish it would be easy like it was back then. Right. And I believe some of the things that, what Chris was saying, that, hey, we might become, without the politics in it, like a California. I don't know, right? Where people really want to come here, and that little shack that you're just like, holy cow. And sometimes I feel like Hialeah is like that. So if you guys are buying Hialeah, I see some of those prices. I know like Chris, I'm surprised you don't buy in Hialeah. I've seen a 3.2 legally become like an 8.4.
Yeah, absolutely.
On that end of it too. So I know we're almost out of time too. Couple things. Ben is coming up with his book. So I'll let you guys know when Ben's got his book. Maybe I'll invite him back, and if he wants to talk about his book and what he does, and what you really don't know, besides Ben crushing it as a luxury real estate guy, I know he's even talked about, like, he's really about giving to people. And
we also have the giveaways. So
sorry, that was me.
Oh,
I was on your RIA YouTube channel. Getting excited.
No worries. Yeah. So so Ben's really about giving back to people. And so he's talking about maybe, he might actually eventually create a course for real estate agents. And he's about spirituality and health and a combination of stuff. So it's pretty exciting. And, we've been talking about doing some partnerships. Chris, I know Chris crushes it in the multifamily, and I used to just sell multifamily as a realtor. To an extent, Chris is my idol of having all those properties and actually managing it and still having his hair, right? So if I had that many properties and managed all that stuff, I don't know what else I would do on that end of it. So whatever he's doing, it's amazing on that portion too. So Chris, do you have anything that you're up to in general that you want to plug? It doesn't matter to me.
No, I mean, if any of you want to hit me up, I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. So just say you can find me on our website, mayfairre.com, or I just got an Instagram account going. So it's _RE.
Yeah. And the other end of it, guys, just, I mean, if you have 10, 20 units and you have something under contract in South Florida, here's the deal though. Guys, you have to have it under contract. Don't call him. He's not a mentor, all that stuff. So you got to respect Ben's time and Chris's time. Our students, we're your mentors. We can help you with that on that end of it. But on the other end of it, if there's any deals, we're here to help you guys out. I know Alexa's we have a winner, right? Are we giving away something, or we're not giving something?
I don't think we gave anything away today, but you will all get an email from me today with all of my direct contact information.
Right.
So any questions, anything that maybe comes to mind.
So now I feel bad. So if you guys sign up for the quick start within the next day or two, I'll take $50 off just to hear me rant for a while. But you have to email Alexa, and she'll have to give you a special code or create something on that end of it, because I thought we were giving something away, but oh well. Now we are.
We are. We are now.
We are now. So on the fly, and I just want to again, to have someone like Chris and Ben to take their time out and really, give their knowledge and their expertise in our market is really, like, I am beyond grateful. It's pretty cool because, like, we might chat and text and that kind of stuff. So, when we were doing the event with the NFL players, like, I was like, wow, I didn't know about this. And so we're looking, again, constantly adding more webinars that you guys want. So that's one of the things I'm committed to. What I am asking, please give us a 5-star Google review. Maybe not for me, maybe for Ben or Chris, because you're sick of me talking all the time. And also, if you email us, if there's things that you guys are interested in on topics, I will try to get other experts through our group to talk about it and make it easy. And as usual, it is, I am super happy that you guys listened in. Make sure Thursday is our next one, Smart Home Loans.
Thursday.
So what Jason's going to talk about, and we've been talking about short-term rentals. Guess what? There is Airbnb financing for short-term rentals. So if you're in that space, I always get those conversations. I'm assuming, because I haven't talked to Jason, if there's financing, that'd be terrible if he's like, hey, there's no financing.
No.
But I'm going to assume that's what he's going to talk about. And also what's been changing with inflation, debt service, DSCR loans, all that other good stuff too. Ben, well, when you come back to Florida, make sure you hit us up. You're up in Vermont. Chris, I always see Chris at the gym, so I'll see you probably this week on that portion. And I want to thank you guys, and we'll see you Thursday for our next webinar, guys.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Chris.
You guys.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Yep.
Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, Chris.